Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Brews, Chews, and News. Sorry about last week. A little miscommunication or whatever, weather. And also today, we have a little bit of a camera problem for people at home. You may not get a full view of everything because one of the cameras is not working. And also sad news, Ponsatali Phil, or whatever his name, saw his shadow, so we're in for 6 more weeks. Winter. So do we have anyone here today who's here for the first time? All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
And you are?
Dolores Furtick.
Dolores. And
It's only my second day, so.
oh, all right. Warm welcome. So where did you move from?
Right down the street.
Another neighbor. We all do that. Well, welcome, and we hope you keep coming back to our coffee hour.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Give her another hand. And what time is it? It's showtime at coffee time. It's that time of the day. We read some stories, sing some oldies, and drive your cares away. It's showtime at coffee time. We lift you up for a while, but we can't do it. You've gotta hop to it. Put on a great big smile. We'll have photographs and belly laughs, and try some games to play. And sometimes we get serious, but we don't stay long that way. So grab a donut and fill your cup. Start to loosen up. Put a smile in place on a happy face as we go on with the show. And now here's Wade to give us some updates.
Thank you, Doris. Good morning, everyone. Please don't make fun of me. Do you all remember Sally Jesse Raphael? These are the only ones I had on my desk, so I got to go out and get the other ones in the truck. No, I want to apologize for last week. It was a big misunderstanding. I know 10 inches of snow is not a normal thing. It wasn't because the donuts weren't here, but when Pete canceled it, we just went along with it. I just blame it on Pete. It won't happen again. This is your meeting. If you guys cancel it, that's okay, but we won't cancel it. So just so you know. Manny wanted me to mention that we are still having a few of these Volante issues. And we're not really sure what's going on, but when our servers are putting in your orders into that computer, sometimes it's not getting back to the kitchen. It's been fixed since last week, so it's working again, but it continues to happen. When it happens, it's slowing up sometimes, and we don't need any slower times, right? So some good news. Spectrum tomorrow will be starting to put that big piece of fiber through the main area of our building. So they're going to be starting at building number 1 and taking it all the way through the middle of the campus. It goes into building number 3. Okay, no, I'm getting a no to that, but I just got an email saying that. Okay. All right, Bob's going to report.
So they are starting today to run the backbone.
Oh, that's even better news.
Where they're starting, because of the spool size, because of the amount of cable they're running, it is going to start at the HR elevator by the military cabinet. That's where they're going to have the spool setting. They'll be taped off and caution tape put up. But they're running it from there all the way back to the clock tower, and then they'll run from the building by the old convenience store, by the bank there, or the old bank. They'll be running it then from there all the way down to the MDF. But that is starting today, so you're going to see some progress.
Progress. We'll be watching, so that's great. Good news. Some more good news regarding the clinic. I believe we should be fully functioning around the 12th of this month.
Austrian theater with all the kids. It kind of sort of went something like this. No, I don't sing. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye. That's me. I apologize. I swore up and down with the first time this opened up, I didn't want to leave. And if it makes any difference, I'm telling you, I still don't want to leave. My heart will always be here. Thank you.
Have him back in a year to see if that's true. So, all right, any questions for me? Yeah, no, the trophy stays here. We've won everything there is. That's right. All right, thank you, everyone. More updates, Bob? No.
Thank you, Wade. And now Sarah's here to let us know what's going on around the village. Is that one?
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to thank you for participating in some of our extra wellness activities last week. It seems like a lot of people had fun with the square dancing, enjoyed some chair massages, and the health and wellness fair. So working to try to get the square dancer back a little more regularly, and then we might also bring those chair massages back too, since it seems like they were well enjoyed. Coming up for this week, I just wanted to remind you now that the blood pressure clinics are on Mondays from 1 to 3, just with all the clinic changes. So that will take place this afternoon, and Mary Bowler's in there ready to check your blood pressure. And then at 2 o'clock, we have Drama Club here in the theater. Tomorrow, February 3rd, just a few reminders for putting golf at 9 a.m. and chimers at 11. And then the resident council will take place at 2 p.m. in the theater. I did want to mention that the Saturday Tai Chis have been moved to Tuesdays at 3:30, and I believe that was in agreement with the participants and the instructor, just for better attendance and consistency. On Wednesday, February 4th, Julie will be hosting Valentine card making at 10 a.m. in the Creative Arts Studio. You'll see on the calendar we do have a new water class that will be added by Mary Bowler as well. That will be Wednesdays at 11 a.m., and it's called Aqua Arthritis. So she'll be offering a full body range of motion and stretching in the water. So we hope you can join us, even if you've never participated in the water exercise before. And also on Wednesday, bocce will take place at 12:45 in the theater, and of course the bookmobile will be here at 1:30 over in the game room. On Thursday, February 5th, Julie will also be hosting a Sweetheart Soaps workshop at 10 a.m. in Creative Arts. And then we'll have our regular Thursday piano performer at 11 a.m. in the Fireside Lounge. And then since we're getting close to Valentine's, on Friday, February 6th, we'll have a special little shop that's going to be in the Fireside. It'll be Touchstone Crystal Swarovski. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but it'll be their spring collection. So we hope you can come by between 11 and 1 to shop. And then following, line dancing will take place at 1 p.m. in the Wellness Studio. And we'll finish off Friday with our 7 p.m. Friday night entertainment. It'll be a jazz singer featuring Michaela Postel. On Saturday, just wanted to remind you that there is Fix-It Saturdays in the wood shop. So if you have broken items, you can bring them on down and they'll do their best to try to fix those up for you. And that takes place at 10 a.m. And then Marlene Bake will be hosting her continuing education at 10:30 in the theater. And then 6 o'clock bingo on Saturday, and following is 6:30 Mexican train. And I think Sue Benson wanted me to mention that they have added a table for Mexican train, so if you normally do bingo and you want to come on over and play both, you can do so. And then it's Super Bowl Sunday already, so I hope you can stop by the theater at 5 o'clock or after for some food and to watch the game. Or if you're like me, you just come for the commercials and the food. So in addition, I just wanted to highlight a few more things coming up. On February 10th, we'll have another Valentine's pop-up shop. This one is hosted by Fort Zumwalt East students from 9:30 to 11. So we'll have all kinds of things ranging from cards to candy to some jewelry and soaps as well. We're still collecting wedding photos. So if you haven't submitted yours, if you want to turn in a copy to Jonathan and he'll scan it in. We've already had about 40 people turn theirs in, which is wonderful. So I'll be putting together a slideshow video with some music that will show throughout the day on 2493 on Valentine's. And then right around the corner, Mardi Gras will be February 17th at 2 o'clock until 3:30. We'll have the Gaslight Squares band, we'll have some food and refreshments, and we hope you can bring your Mardi Gras mask with you. For our outings, just real quick, on February 3rd, Walgreens Senior Discount Day, the bus will leave at noon. February 4th, we have Schnucks at 9:30. February 5th, Doctors Within 9 Miles. And then Friday, February 6th, we have Trader Joe's at 9:45, Banks at 11, and Shops in the Valley at noon. And then, I've got a full agenda today. Dick Ketting's 90th birthday is coming up on Saturday, and he wanted to invite everyone from 2 to 4 in the Trillium Theater to stop by if you'd like. So again, these flyers are posted around. You may see them at the concierge. And then we're also starting to kind of gather interest for the air show coming up. I know it's not until June. Joe Gurney works a lot to kind of help us get this organized. But just wanted to kind of a show of hands. Do we have some interest if we started getting a bus together? Okay. All right. Very good. So we'll start working on tickets. They're $45. And then we'll put some more information out about that too. Bert, did you have anything?
Good morning, everyone. Sarah mentioned Mardi Gras on the 17th. That means the 18th, that's 2 weeks from Wednesday, is Ash Wednesday. We do 2 Ash Wednesday services, one in our Care Center chapel, that's at 10:30 in the morning, and then, of course, 7 o'clock on that Wednesday night. And then that begins the season of Lent, and we do special Lenten services on Wednesday nights, and I organize those with various residents and staff who can share on the topic, the difference Christ has made in me. And so those are coming together now. If there's someone that you know, like, Bert, you should be talking to so-and-so, their story is one we want to hear, let me know. I'm in the process of extending invitations, inviting people to share, and trying to get those services planned. But it all begins, of course, on the 18th with Ash Wednesday. Thanks.
Were there any other items up for discussion today? All right, well, just like we had a lot of announcements, we also have a lot of birthdays, and covering a few from this last week, too, on February 1st. So did we have any birthdays in here today or for this week? Nobody? Okay, Barb, happy early birthday. All right, so for February 1st, we have John Boney, and also Ed Bowman, Carol Poland, and Nancy Weisenfels. February 2nd, Bruce Beeler, Dick Ketting. On February 5th, Bernadette Travers. February 6th, we have Delilah Canning and Chuck Jordan, along with Barb Winter. February 7th, Dee Buffuno, Nancy Cahut, Dorothy Long, Barbara O'Brien. And February 8th, we have Mike Boland, Quay Feinfrock, Betty Walters, and Joan Wenneman. So happy birthday. Thank you all.
To you, happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you. And now Carla is going to come in, get us prepared for Valentine candy.
Happy Monday morning. Good morning. Thank you for standing. All right, let's begin by taking a couple deep breaths. In through the nose, 2 or 3, and then out twice the time. In through your nose, out 4. Let's do 3. In 3, out 6, slow and deliberate. All right, now let's look each way 5 times. 4, 3, 2, slowly again. Now looking forward, let's look down, then up. 4, 3, 2, down, up, straight ahead. Good. Now roll your shoulders, exaggerate. Forward, up, and back 3 more times. 3 and 2 and 1. Good job. Now lift up over your head. Watch your neighbors. 4 more. And 3, 2. Hold the arms up. Now touch the back of your head and reach back up. 4, 3, 2, all the way up. Now look up and climb upward. Reach toward the ceiling. One arm, then the other. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Holding here. Now we're balancing. Lift up your left heel if you feel okay with that. Hold for a few seconds. All right, let's put that heel down. Lift up the other one. Hold it there. Breathing well. Excellent. Put that heel down and then bring your hands across your chest. Hinge forward at your hips 5 times. Forward and up. Good. 4 more. And 3. Very nice. 2 more. And 1. Very good. Hands to your hips. Circle your hips. Hula hoop style. 5 times one way. 4. And 3. 2. Good. Reverse that. 5. 4. 3. 2. And 1. Now roll through your feet. Lift up one heel, then the other. 8, 7, 6, 5, and 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good job. All right, bring your hands together. Point down, then up. Down, up. 4, 3, 2, down and up. Now lace your fingers and press away. Bring them back in. Take your hand vigorously. Shake your hands out. A few more. Good. Now all the way up again. Hands coming together, then right here in front. And take a bow. Thank you for joining me. Thank you.
And now we have a presentation by Tom Martin. Use that or-
Sure.
Okay, you have to talk right into it.
Can you hear me? This is better, right? Well, I'm going to talk about the history of the development of treatments for elevated cholesterol. I'd like to make a few notations because generally when we teach the medical students, every drug has 2 names. One is a generic name and the other is the brand name. Since I teach the medical students, I use mostly the generic. So I had to go look up the brand name so that I could maybe make this understandable. Everything started back in about 1948. What we learned after the Second World War and during the war was that this process of atherosclerosis, which in lay terms means hardening of the arteries, was discovered. And it was discovered when we operated on our young men who were killed or injured in battle. We did postmortems on them, and we found that even the healthiest of the healthy at that time had evidence of this process going on. So the government actually got something right. In 1948, they started a study in a small town in Massachusetts called Framingham. And Framingham's important because the people in Framingham have agreed to be examined twice a year since that time to the current time. That's 77 years this study's been going on. And what we learned was very valuable, thanks to these people who have donated their time. And the reason they picked that place is because these people were born, raised, and died usually within the region of Framingham, Massachusetts. So they didn't have to chase them all over the country to find out what was going on. And the things that we learned were that there were 4 major things that determined or accelerated this process of hardening of the arteries, and that was if you had high blood pressure. The biggie was smoking, which everybody did back then. We're all old enough in this room to know about that. Diabetes, which is still a major risk factor for the development of hardening of the arteries, and high cholesterol. The interesting thing is, when I was a senior medical student, a normal cholesterol was 300. So we've come a long way. Now it's less than 200, and it now has been divided into 3 to 4 major parts, depending on who you talk to. But how we measured cholesterol, initially when we tried to understand the other components of just the total cholesterol, it was done by ultracentrifugation in a cold environment. There weren't many people across the country who had that capability, but we learned that if we spun this serum very quickly, we could get this molecule to come out of solution, and it did so at varying rates depending on how long and the speed of the centrifuge. As a consequence, we named these things total cholesterol, and it was divided into the one that came out the first, which was high-density lipoprotein, and then the one that we think causes all the problems, the low-density lipoprotein. The difference between the total cholesterol and the high-density cholesterol is the 4th measurement, and that's non-high-density cholesterol. Why do we do that? Well, because if you think about it, when we have cholesterol, it's a fat, and you can't put fat in water. We all know that. And so how do we do that in a body that's 70% water? Well, the architect of our being decided a very smart thing. He wrapped these molecules of fat in protein, and they got named by some of the scientists who study lipidology. And what it does is they wrap it in protein because it makes it soluble in water, which means we don't precipitate it in our bloodstream. But unfortunately, when it's elevated, we've learned to precipitate it in our blood vessels. So the complications of hardening of the arteries are limited primarily to those major areas in the body where this occurs, and that's the brain, the heart, the kidney, and the lower extremities. The first pass at treatment was a drug called Questran. And Questran, in my humble opinion, and by the way, all these are my humble opinion in terms of interpretation of the literature, so there's obviously a large room for disagreement. But what we did was, Questran was and it'll come to me in just a second, but it tasted like sand. And when you took it was a resin, thank you. When you took it, it blocked the absorption of cholesterol from the gut, so it lowered the cholesterol. It also didn't taste very well, so they tried to put it in different flavors, and it never worked as far as I was concerned. The data showed that it could lower the cholesterol, but it didn't do any good for you clinically. You still developed this hardening of the arteries, and in those times, it was very early. I think the average on onset was in the mid-40s for males, and usually after the age of 55 in females. So I didn't put my patients on Equestrian. One, I didn't want them trying swallowing sand, and two, there's an expense to it, and three, it was lowering the cholesterol, but it wasn't doing them any good as far as I was concerned. So things stayed pretty much the same until approximately 1941, when a Japanese company developed a drug called the statin. And the first statin that was developed was simvastatin. The brand name I looked up is Zocor. And Zocor was the first, and right after that, they also developed pravastatin, which is Pravachol. They were both in 1991. It turns out that this Japanese company has developed all four of the major statin drugs. Wouldn't you like to have some investment in that company? But so Zocor was founded in 1991, and everything kind of remained static. But in 1996, there was a new kid on the block, and that was atorvastatin, which is Lipitor. An interesting thing happened then. Both simvastatin and pravastatin, or Pravachol, had studies to show that not only could we lower cholesterol, but it saved lives. The first study was the 4S study, which was done in Scandinavia, and we had learned, or not we, because I can't take credit for it, that if we put acronyms on these studies, they were much easier to remember than the scientific name. So the study that showed that not only could we lower cholesterol, but we could save lives was the 4S study. It stood for Simvastatin Scandinavian Survival Study. It not only lowered cholesterol, but there was a mortality benefit. That meant that if you were on the drug, you had 20% less chance of dying from hardening of the arteries than if you were not treated. This went on and was interesting because the most popular drug, once we got to 1996, was Lipitor. I got to translate these to the brand names. I'm so used to talking about the generics. And they came out, and it was more potent than either Lipitor or Pravachol. As a consequence, it became the most widely prescribed prescription in the United States. But the interesting thing is they did not have clinical data like simvastatin did, and Pravachol also did studies to show that if you took that drug, it lowered your cholesterol, and you also got a mortality benefit and a delay in the onset of major complications from hardening of the arteries, heart attacks, stroke, kidney disease, and peripheral vascular disease. Obviously, the people who had spent all their money to do these researches were not happy. So Bristol-Myers Squibb, and probably one of the major screw-ups of marketing, decided to take on the Lipitor head-to-head. So Pravachol, it was called the Prove It trial. Well, they proved it. It didn't work out the way they thought. What they proved was that, yes, both drugs lowered your cholesterol. It turns out that Lipitor lowered it much better than did Pravachol. And they proved the concept that Pfizer had never spent the money for, to prove that it lowered mortality, and it lowered it more than did Pravachol. So the drug of choice among most physicians was the use of Lipitor. These drugs are relatively safe. They do have some side effects, and actually simvastatin has more than the other three. Statistically, less than 0.1% of the people who take these drugs will have a problem with them. That's not true for Zocor because it is a different compound, and we have found that it can cause some major problems and is not used very much anymore because it's relatively weak also. The next thing that came about was since Lipitor got a free ride, they decided they would do a study. They'd already proven that it improved mortality thanks to Bristol Myers Squibb. They did a study called the TNT trial. And what that acronym stands for is Treat to New Targets. We thought that, as I told you in the beginning, normal cholesterol was 300. We were finding out that that really wasn't true. And so we had lowered it to 200, and we had learned that the particle that's mostly included in this process of hardening of the arteries is the LDL cholesterol. Well, to measure LDL cholesterol in its natural state, you have to measure apolipoprotein, apo meaning a type of protein, lipo meaning fat, and protein is the wrapping that goes around this molecule so it's soluble in blood. And LDL is mostly made up of apolipoprotein B, but technically it's a much more difficult assay to perform in the lab. So we kind of estimate it by the current process we use now. And when you get a LDL in your lipid panel, it's kind of approximating exactly what the apolipoprotein is, but it's much easier to do and it's much cheaper. So the issue that became important was how do we lower LDL and what level should we be at? Because you can't do without the basic chemical ring that forms these cholesterol. They also form most of the sex hormones in the body and also some of the emergency hormones made in the adrenal gland. So everybody was worried. We didn't know, is it okay to have an LDL of 130, which is what it was thought at the time. The TNT trial showed that if you can get it less than that using one of the most potent statin we had at the time, which was Lipitor, that you did better than if you left it at 130. The normal still stayed about the same. It took a while to develop something that made it possible to lower the LDL more, and that was adding a drug called ezetimibe. The brand name is Zetia, and that came along in 2002. It was a relatively benign drug. It could be taken with the statin drugs, and it lowered the cholesterol somewhere between 10 and 20% more than you got with the statin alone. So we did that, and it turned out that that was a good thing. Also in 2002, it's an interesting phenomenon that the Brits thought we were crazy because we were involved in what they called hypercholesterol mania. And they did a study that was very unusual. It was called the Heart Protection Study. And it's the only study I know of, at least in my experience, that as a criteria to get into the study, your doctor had to think you didn't need to be treated for elevated cholesterol. So if your doctor in Great Britain told you you didn't need to be on a drug for your cholesterol because obviously the Yanks had this cholesterol mania, you were enrolled in the study. And the study drug was, again, simvastatin. It was the first mega trial, meaning that it was over 1,000 people. It was actually almost 25,000. So it was, and it's a national health system, so it was easy to do. What they learned was this. If you had diabetes, it didn't matter where your cholesterol was. If you took simvastatin, you lived longer and did better. It didn't matter in those people who were told they didn't need to be on a drug for their high cholesterol. They did better than the people who were treated, as the Brits thought we were crazy. They did better. So it sort of changed their mind that we weren't necessarily crazy. We had learned that it's actually better to be treated. The next kid on the block was a drug called rosuvastatin, or Crestor. So it came late. It's people who deal like Susie would know that it's hard to break into an established drug class if you're the last kid on the block. So Crestor had learned that with Lipitor and the other statins, not only did they lower cholesterol, but people seemed to do better in general for reasons that weren't clear. And we call that, when you get an accidental benefit from a drug that wasn't designed to do that, a pleiotropic effect. Well, Crestor was the most potent statin that had been released up to that time. It was more potent than Lipitor. And it had this property that it would lower a marker in the blood that reflected the amount of inflammation in the body. It's got a fancy name. It's called high sensitivity CRP. And it's just a general marker of an inflammatory state in the body. And it turns out that Crestor not only lowers your cholesterol, but it lowers your high sensitivity CRP. So they took people who were at, we thought, low risk because their LDL was at least 130 or less, and they give it to another large population. And what they showed was that you did better on it if you could lower this marker of inflammation. This has come to fruition over the years since that study, and that was done in 2008. We are now looking at drugs that interfere with inflammation in the body, and specifically, we've gotten more specific as the technology has improved and it's better to do an analysis. That is another area that is now ongoing currently to see if we can influence this inflammation besides using Crestor. There are a lot of people who can't take statins because it's the most widely prescribed drug in the United States, but it's also the most beneficial. Some of the side effects are muscle aches, and some people, but interestingly enough, it's not your left shoulder or hamstring or something hurts. It's got to be generalized muscle aches, so if it's related to the drug. And there's another unique phenomenon, and that is you may have that problem with one of the statins, but if we switch you to one of the other ones, it gets better. So that doesn't mean that you can't take them at all, but you have to be switched around to see if you can find it. We now have another drug that came on board, and that was in 2015, and it works by a different mechanism than the statins, and that is that it's got a fancy name. It's called PCSK9, and it is a small protein. As a consequence, to be effective, it has to be injected, because if you ingest it instead of inject it, it gets destroyed by the enzymes in the stomach. But it's a very potent drug in terms of lowering LDL specifically. What it does is it can lower it up to 50 to 60%, in addition to whatever lowering you get from Zetia, the statins, and another drug that came out a little bit later called inclisiran. So it is very, very effective. And what we've learned is that the lower we get your LDL, the better you seem to do in terms of decreasing the risk of cardiovascular disease, stroke, heart attacks, kidney problems, and peripheral vascular disease. And you live longer, and that's the goal of our profession. We're the only profession I know of that's trying to put ourselves out of business. So there are lots of alternatives now. It's been a really remarkable development over a period of about 77 years, if we go back to the Framingham study, which is, by the way, still ongoing. To mirror that, I don't know how much time I've got, there's been a major development in terms of how we treat the complications of peripheral vascular disease. And our hope is we developed, with the data from the Framingham study, what is called the Framingham risk factor. And that's a calculation that can estimate your probability of developing clinical cardiovascular disease within 5 or 10 years. And the hope is that if we gave you these wondrous new drugs early enough, because we knew it occurred very early because of our studies in, unfortunately, post-World War II young individuals, we might prevent this process of cardiovascular disease being developed. The drugs have been studied extensively. Not only do they prevent the development as rapidly as they would occur without lowering your LDL cholesterol, if you already have some of these deposits in your vessels, they tend to get better. That was done out of the Cleveland Clinic. So there's a lot of good reasons that if you have an elevated cholesterol, besides treating the other 3 risk factors, you will get more benefit. And the more we control your blood pressure, the better we get with controlling your diabetes. And if we can get you to stop smoking, you get to be a member of Friendship Village. Because this is a very exclusive population. I don't know if anybody knows this, but to get past your 80th birthday, only 3% of the American population gets to do that. So this is a very select group. I think I'll stop there. Obviously, there's a lot more, but that's just a summary.
Thank you, Tom. All right, we're going to have a sing-along. Weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Doesn't show signs of stopping, and I brought some corn for popping. Buds are turned way down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I hate going out in the storm. But if you really hold me tight, all the way home I'll be warm. The fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbying. As long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Doesn't show signs of stopping, and I've brought some corn for popping. The lights are turned way down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I hate going out in the storm. But if you really hold me tight, all the way home I'll be warm. The fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbying. As long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. And now Pat Burris is going to do a reading.
Advice to the Lovelorn. This was written by Bill Schicht. Whatever happened to Advice to the Lovelorn? Yes, indeed, there was an actual newspaper column by that title. It was created in 1898 by Marie Manning as a column originally in the New York Evening Journal. Manning wrote under the nom de plume Beatrice Fairfax. The column generated enormous interest as indicated by its national syndication and the fact that its readers inundated the column with 1,400 letters per day at the peak of its popularity. Having an invented personality as author meant that the column could continue when Manning resigned in 1905. She returned to the column 24 years later in 1929 and then continued as writer until her death in 1945. But even in her total absence, the column was continued by other female staffers until its demise in 1966. What killed it was not that the advice genre fell out of favor, but rather that it was surpassed by other newer and fresher advice columnists, such as Dear Abby and Ask Ann Landers. Abby, Pauline Esther Popo Phillips, and Ann, Esther Pauline Eppie Lederer, were identical twin sisters who competed in the same print space as advice columnists. Although they did not write under their real names, they chose celebrity over anonymity when they appeared on TV and made numerous public appearances. This helped them gain a competitive edge over all other advice columns that were cloaked in full anonymity. After the Long Sisters' long careers and their frequent public feuds with one another, their columns went in different directions, subsequent to their retirements. Dear Abby's daughter Jean took over her mother's column in 2000 at the advent of her mother's dementia. The column continues in production and is nationally syndicated. And Landers' column ceased publication with her death in 2002 at her own request. However, her legacy did continue as her editors began writing a similar advice column that they dubbed Dear Annie. And Ann Landers' daughter Margot also began writing her own advice column that she designated Dear Prudence. Both Dear Annie and Dear Prudence continue in syndication. Recent developments, though, have greatly transformed the personal advice space. The internet has almost totally eclipsed newspapers as a means of daily connection with readers. Readership of print newspapers has fallen by nearly 80% since the 1970s. At present, just 5% of adult Americans read a print newspaper daily. Instead of 50 to 60 million readers per day, newspaper advice columnists now register only 10 million daily readers. Whereas just 2 or 3 advice columnists once dominated print media, today there are literally scores of self-proclaimed advice gurus that haunt every nook and cranny of the internet. Blogs, YouTube, Facebook, Reddit, and TikTok overflow with self-styled relationship advisors and influencers. Now, when newspapers were king, they were the only way for self-styled relationship advisors to reach a national audience on a daily basis. Because most people read only one paper, the number of advice columns was limited. But now, as the internet has opened new channels of daily contact with readers, the lovelorn sector is fragmented as never before. But one of the best new ways to obtain fast, personalized, individual advice on interpersonal relationships is simply to ask an AI chatbot like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Copilot. Skip the newspaper columnists and the countless entire talking heads. Instead, just consult a chat box next time and see what you think.
Thank you, Pat. Since you're all in good voice this morning, we're going to sing again. And now we have a reading by Pete Farley. He memorized it.
Yes, ma'am, I do. Thank you. One thing I haven't told you. I've been asked to pass out a 20-page questionnaire about cholesterol. So I expect everybody to do very well. I don't mean to brag, but I finished my 14-day diet food supply in 3 hours and 20 minutes. A recent study has found women who carry a little extra weight live longer than the men who mention it. Kids today don't know how easy they have it. When I was young, I had to walk 9 feet through shag carpet to change a TV channel. Remember back when we were kids, and every time it was below freezing outside, they closed school? Yeah, me neither. I may not be that funny or athletic or good looking or smart or talented. Gosh, I forgot where I was going with this. Now, here's something that you might really like. Everything I need to know, I learned from the story of Noah's Ark. First, don't miss the boat. Second, remember that we are all in the same boat. Third, it's important to plan ahead. It wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. Stay fit. When you're 100 years old, someone might ask you to do something really big, like build the ark. Don't listen to critics. Just get on with the job that needs to be done. Build your future on high ground. For safety's sake, travel in pairs. Speed isn't always an advantage. The snails were on the same boat with the cheetahs. Remember, the ark was built by amateurs. The Titanic was built by professionals. No matter the storm, there's always a rainbow ahead. Now here's something you got to kind of follow me with. Every once in a while, you need a clean joke. John invited his mom over for dinner. During the course of the meal, his mother couldn't help but noticing how beautiful John's roommate was. She had been suspicious of the relationship between John and his roommate for quite a while, and this had only made her more curious. Over the course of the meal, while watching the two react, she started to wonder if there was something between John and his roommate that met the eye. Reading his mother's thoughts, John volunteered, "I know what you're thinking, but I assure you, Julie and I are just roommates." About a week later, Julie came to John saying, "Ever since your mother came to dinner, I've been unable to find the silver gravy ladle. You don't suppose your mom took it with her, do you?" John said, "Well, I doubt it, but I'll send her an email just to be sure." So he wrote, "Dear Mother, I'm not saying that you took the gravy ladle from the house, and I'm not saying you didn't take the ladle, but the fact is, it's been missing since you were here for dinner the other night." Several days later, John received his mother's reply. "Dear John, I'm not saying you're sleeping with your roommate, and I'm not saying you're not sleeping with your roommate. But the fact is, if she were sleeping in the same bed, she would have found the ladle by now. Love, Mom." So, don't lie to your mom. That's it.
God bless. Oh, hold on just a second. Mary Ann has an announcement to make.
I have an announcement. Okay, next week, some of you have probably heard this, but next week, oh, sorry. Okay, so next week we're going to have a little tribute to the Winter Olympics. And we're going to show a couple of videos just to get us interested. But also, we thought it might be a nice idea for some of the sports teams here at the Village to wear their T-shirts. And if you want to, wear your T-shirt next week, and we can come up. We'll introduce each of the teams. So I'm thinking bocce, the pool players, cornhole, ping pong, water volleyball, and putting. Now, did I forget any teams? Anybody? It's not really a sports team, Pete. But you can wear your T-shirt. Anyway, you can wear your T-shirt and come up or not, whatever feels good to you. Sarah has in her office some national flags. If you want to appoint somebody from your sports team to carry a flag in. She also has a torch if someone wants to carry the Olympic torch. So anyway, that's my announcement. God bless America.
We'll have our own Olympics. America, land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairie, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Have a great week, everyone. I'm sorry.